Hello, everybody, and welcome to Healthy Homes and Healthy Environment. I'd like to introduce Rashid Saluman, Sulaman. He is a risk communication and public involvement officer for Health Canada in Ontario. Rashid conducts an outreach and engagement activities on environmental health issues for chemicals management plan, a government of Canada initiative. He aims to reducing posed by chemical to people and their environment, and I'd like to welcome him.
I'll also be presenting today with my colleague Phoebe, who works on my team, and Phoebe Tung is the air quality specialist in the Ontario region and also the radiation specialist at the same time. But thanks for having us here today. We're very excited to be here to introduce to you the Healthy Home campaign, which you'll be seeing more from actually as Indigenous Service Canada starts to build upon their healthy housing initiatives, teaching people about chemical exposure in homes. And I know that this presentation is very different from all the other presentations or these amazing things that we got to see with housing and building, but I think it's equally as important after infrastructure is put in place and people are in homes. How do we take care of not just the homes, but our residents that live within the communities for long-term health benefits? And I think the tips that we give to you here today hope to achieve that. So please, I hope you enjoy the presentation, and if you have any questions or if you want to speak to us afterwards, we're happy to talk to you about it, or if something comes in your mind, just let us know. We'll be around. Phoebe and I also had a booth the other day at Health Canada booth at the conference. I don't know if you came by and said hi. Yeah, we heard so many great success stories about infrastructure and home building here today, but we also heard a lot of challenges from community leaders who work to improve health for residents in homes. That included with developing policies and programs which are crucial to ensure communities are kept healthy and safe from avoidable dangers. As housing professionals, I know your actions are key to meeting residents' housing needs and can positively influence health outcomes through awareness and how to reduce exposure of chemicals and pollutants in the home. So I hope that you take from this presentation very simple tips on that you can communicate to residents in homes about chemical exposure. And that's how we're going to try to shape this. Very actionable, easy to understand tips to help reduce chemicals. Because Phoebe and I could talk a long time about all the types of chemicals that residents can be exposed to in their homes. But we want to just focus on top 10 tips to give you that you can communicate to residents. So yes, my name is Rashid, and I'm joined by my colleague here, Phoebe. Just to begin, who we are, we work for the Environmental Health Program of Ontario. That's Health Canada, under Health Canada. Health Canada is more focused on research and promotion. I just want to make that distinguish between other organizations or other departments such as Indigenous Services Canada and CMHC, the Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation. Those organizations are going to be delivering in-person or in-community support when it comes to sanitation, healthy homes, chemicals, pollution. So if you have any direct questions, there are environmental health officers, there's different supports for training and funding, but Health Canada does work closely with them to share research, to share knowledge. And you're going to be seeing a lot more communication on chemical protection and pollutant protection in homes from Indigenous Service Canada soon as they build their healthy homes. We're bringing it to you now though, early. Did you know that every day you can be exposed to environmental hazards in your home that may pose a risk to health and well-being? The surrounding environment has the potential to adversely affect people's health through everyday exposure to chemicals such as air pollution, air quality, radon, chemicals and pollutants, household cleaners. Some effects of, for example, bad indoor air quality may be apparent right away. You can see like wheezing or coughing when you're exposed to high levels of maybe formaldehyde or a chemical cleaner. However, some effects might take longer, and those are the effects that some of those effects will be focused on today for long-term health and safety of your residents. Effects from, like, for example, we'll cover radon. Radon gas, which is actually the leading cause of lung cancer in Canada after smoking, and that's after long-term exposure in homes. So, every small action as housing professionals or housing leaders, even small actions like taking your shoes off at the door, or changing out of your work clothes when you get home after a construction job or some sort of some work. Little activities like that can actually drastically reduce your family's exposure to chemicals in your home. So that's what we're going to just bring to you today from the Healthy Home Campaign. 10 simple steps that I hope you can take away to reduce family exposure to carbon monoxide, asbestos, chemical cleaners, indoor air quality and pollutants that we have found at Health Canada can have adverse health effects in long term. So we do have a website, Healthy Home, but Indigenous Service Canada, they are growing this exact same communication directly for Indigenous communities, First Nation communities. So you will be seeing more of these tips from them. So let's get right to the tips. Simple tips. 10 tips to protect you from chemicals and pollutants in your home. And I hope if you say, easy, that's very easy. I do this all the time. That's exactly what we want. We just want the simple actions that you can take, and it's just to remember them. So tip number 1 is to read the label. You probably use many household chemical products in and around your home and garage. These products may include cleaning liquids and powders, polishes, drain cleaners, pesticides, paint and paint thinners, liquid laundry detergent packages, windshield washer fluid. These types of products can be dangerous and cause burns, fires, poisoning, and explosions if not handled properly. So to save your life, protect yourself from long-term health effects, first thing to do is always read the label. When you read a label, what are you looking for? When you grab a label, you're shopping in a grocery store, you pick up a product, read the ingredients, but we like to point you to the hazard symbols first. If you follow the instructions, you can prevent an injury, save a life. When you pick up a product, take a look at the hazard symbols, and just to note, also never mix household chemicals together. They can produce harmful gases. Another thing to look up when you are checking out a product or a new product is look for the directions on how to use, store, and dispose of chemical products safely. This is a reminder that I have to give myself a lot too. I recently got new medication for my dog. I've been using it for months because I thought it was the same medication as I always had used. But after I read the instructions, I realized, oh, I'm supposed to shake it and apply it in a different way. And I didn't think of it because I'm so accustomed to use this product, I didn't think to read or remind myself on how to use it correctly, especially it being a different brand. So always a good idea, even if you're familiar with a product, to read the instructions to make sure you are using it correctly and safely. For example, you can ensure that you have all the safety gear that protect your skin, your eyes, your face, and breathing. The last thing to look at whenever you pick up a label is to look at what to do in case of an emergency. And this is a really important thing to remind residents also, to make sure that they have the emergency numbers. Sometimes hospitals or if ambulance is not available, there might be a local community number that you might have to remember. So just to share that with them. I have the Ontario Poison Center number there for you too. So, on the Health Canada website, we have listed over 30-something chemicals that people can come in contact in their home and that pose a danger to them. And we've listed plain, easy-to-read language on how to protect yourself. We are promoting, making videos, working with Indigenous Service Canada also to promote and make videos about these chemicals. partly about reading the labels, but also about how to be safe around them. Some chemicals is very difficult for a resident to work with, such as asbestos. But some chemicals, residents can do projects on their own, maintain their home, as long as they're working with those chemicals safely. Asbestos is one of the chemicals where we are just advising, make sure you have a professional. If you remember, asbestos was used for fireproofing. It's a fibrous, natural occurring element that reduces fire. However, it has been linked to lung cancer and is very dangerous. It could still be found in places like building insulation, cement and plaster, house siding, floor and ceiling tiles, car and truck brake pads. Even though it was not allowed to use since the 70s, you can still find them in a lot of these products, even truck pads, because they were continuously, brake pads were used even afterwards. So if there's asbestos in the home, if it's remained undisturbed, it does not pose a health hazard because the fibers do not enter the air, so they can't enter your lungs. However, if you're drilling, sawing, sanding, scraping, doing an activity, that's when you want to ensure that you have a professional. So when it comes to asbestos, again, this is not something we recommend for residents to look at, but to get to a professional, because they would have to have a specialized equipment to ensure that they don't breathe it in. So if you are planning any renovations or remodeling, to have a professional to look at the asbestos and to remove it if needed. Now, formaldehyde is the next chemical I wanted to talk to you about, where it's something that people can work around safely. Formaldehyde is naturally occurring also, but it's been used in glues, adhesive, paints, varnishes, and wallpaper. And the danger comes from off-gassing as it releases into the air. Low levels of formaldehyde do not pose a threat. However, moderate levels meaning if you're working on a project and you have long-term exposure to formaldehyde, it does increase asthma symptoms and breathing conditions. And in industrial settings, it has been linked to cancer in nasal passageways. So how to decrease your exposure to formaldehyde? Eliminate or prevent the use of it. It also comes from combustion, such as smoking or vehicles too. So you just want to make sure that you're ventilating, especially when you're doing projects. You remove people who might be more sensitive to the off-gassing, such as children. And because it's one of those things that has been linked to asthma, you want children away because during their development stages, that's when we find that asthma does start forming, because the lungs are developing and children are taking in more breaths. So if you're painting, varnishing, installing carpets, to just remove anybody who's sensitive, or to ventilate. If you buy new furniture, allow time for off-gassing. And as off-gassing occurs, it does reduce the formaldehyde levels. And you'll also be seeing soon formaldehyde regulations on wood products, which will be coming out soon from Health Canada and Environment Canada. So tip number 2, keep household chemical products locked in cupboards or drawers and out of the reach of children. So this is very important as you are doing projects or at home. You might find that children can be very curious, or pets, or even different people if things aren't labeled properly. We have seen an increase over the pandemic of increasing calls on Ontario Poison Control of accidental ingestion of solvents, of laundry detergent pads, of bleach cleaning, or even overuse of it. And because you can also get poisoned also through breathing in too much as it burns the airway passages. So some tips about storing. Store in original containers and according to instructions. So another tip to read the label. Keep the safety information, because in case you have to call an emergency. Regularly check containers for leaks and damages, and return expired and unused medications to the pharmacy. So yes, if you don't know where to return medication, you can always just bring it back to the pharmacy. Try not to expose chemicals to extreme temperatures, and keep them away from food sources. We were just talking about formaldehyde and off-gassing. This is the same for chemicals in containers. they can off-gas too. Or if there's leaking, they can also find their way into food sources. So try not to store the chemicals near your food. Also, if possible, store chemicals, fuel containers, gas-powered equipments away from your ventilation that enters your home too, or out of, not an attached garage, if possible. So what do you do when you have something now to dispose? You read the label, you stored correctly. How do you dispose of chemicals? Well, hopefully, to protect the contamination of our soil, air, and water, you're able to please try to read the label or dispose of chemicals properly by following local authority. Now, this one is tough because a lot of local authorities would have different procedures, or sometimes you might not even have procedures on how to store. It's very important to try to work with residents to understand their options to disposing of chemicals, especially toxic household materials. Sometimes there could be a community collection program. Sometimes if there's no options, you can contact the retailer. There might be an option to return the products. And this is just really important to enforce about protection of the air, of soil. Just reminders not to burn household chemicals in containers. Don't pour contents down the drain or toilet. Don't reuse empty household chemical containers. So tip number 4, we're moving along, just 10 tips. So let tap water run until it's cold. If you know or suspect you have lead in drinking water, you can reduce your exposure by letting tap water run until it's cold. And this focuses around tap water. If you do have well water, you would want to make sure that it is tested and treated. But when it comes to tap water, from our research, we have seen that metals can leach through hotter water, or warmer temperatures, sorry, and as well as other contaminants. So hot water could increase somebody's intake of lead or the release of lead. Why is lead dangerous? Well, lead is dangerous for both children, especially dangerous for children and adults. Adults, it can lead to kidney problems and high blood pressure. In children, it does accumulate and can affect children's development, especially mental development. So the tip is if you are using tap water for drinking, anything to drinking, cooking, washing foods, making baby food, to run it until it's cold. Just a little until that will flush out the pipes and any metals that might be in there too. Further tip, if water's been sitting in the tank for a while, run it by flushing the pipes or by flushing a toilet or taking a shower just to clear out some of that water. You can also change the aerator or clean the aerator so that if there's any contaminants or metals that are in it, just clean that out too. Another tip also, if you're using filters, to just read the label of the filter to make sure it is filtering out what you want it to filter. Some filters do filter metal. Tip number 5, wash your hands often. So washing your hands is a tip you probably heard a lot because it's great at reducing infectious disease, such as viruses. But our tip is just to focus on washing your hands after you've touched a chemical product, after you came home from work, after you even pet your pets, just to help spread or decrease the spread of transmission of chemicals and pollutants from the previous activity. So we know how to wash our hands, the 20-second rule. And if you don't have if you're unable to wash your hands, to just use a sanitizer to kill harmful microbes. Washing your hands is also important for yourself, because if you're like me and like to touch your face a lot or scratch, if you are cooking, we found some of the ways that viruses or chemicals do enter the body is through touch, dermally, and through your eyes. So if you are just picked up Windex, you cleaned, just sprayed it and cleaned the window, that actually does pass on to like children through your clothes, through the washing machine, through your face, through your skin, all just by touch. So a very simple way of reducing that transmission is just by keeping those areas clean and to wash your hands. So tip number 6 is keep your home clean. So this is more focused about trying to reduce people in the home's exposure to chemicals and pollutants, especially that contained in dust. There is a lot of you can find metals contained in dust, you can find dust mites that aggravate asthma contained in dust, or allergens that are in dust. And so I'll give you a few quick tips on keeping your home clean. First, we recommend trying to use a wet cloth or mop to remove dust and dirt. This way, dust won't rise into the air. And if you have certain things like lead, metals, or feces in dust that that can aggravate asthma or other breathing conditions, wiping it will make sure that it doesn't enter the air. Vacuum weekly, and if possible, use a HEPA filter, because HEPAs are great at capturing dust particles. It's also great at capturing like allergens. And then finally, remove your shoes at the door. In dirt, like I was saying, there could be a lot of metals in dirt. There could be feces or other contaminants in dirt. So after work, you're coming home from work. This includes your work clothes also. If there's contaminants on your work clothes, just try to leave it at the door. If you like to wear shoes indoors, put on your indoor shoes. That will help reduce, especially if you have children playing on the floor, that'll help reduce transmission of dust and dirt in your home. Okay.
Hi everyone, so my name is Phoebe and I'll be presenting the rest of the tips for the presentation. So tip number 7 is to prevent mold. So what is mold? And I understand there was a previous presentation on this. It's a common word for any fungus that grows on food or damp materials. It can be black, white, or almost any other color, and may oftentimes look like a stain or a smudge. So conditions for mold to grow, generally it's moisture and some sort of material for it to grow upon. What we do know is that exposure to large amounts of mold may lead to negative health impacts, and some of those symptoms may include eyes, nose, throat irritation, coughing, and even asthma and allergy-like symptoms. So in terms of cleaning mold, Health Canada does have recommendations for it. If in the house it's generally a very small area, we recommend just cleaning it with hot water and dish detergent. There really isn't a need to be using any harsh chemicals like bleach to remove it. And if you are removing it yourself, just consider wearing some personal protective equipment if you have it available, such as a mask, gloves, or maybe goggles. Now, if the mold is over a much larger area, over 1 square meter, which is roughly about half the size of the door, and is also reoccurring, that's when it is important to talk to a professional, not only to address where the source of moisture is coming from, but also to safely remove it from the house. So here we have a couple of tips on things that you can do in the home to prevent mold from growing. A lot of it focuses on sort of individual actions homeowners can take. So when there are water leaks, try to address it as quickly as possible, and try to make sure that area is dry within 48 hours, and that can kind of reduce or minimize the growth of mold. When you're cooking and showering, run your exhaust fans, and run it for a couple of minutes even after you're done to have it fully remove the moisture. If you don't have an exhaust fan available, then something as simple as opening a window can also help remove some of the moisture as well. Try to avoid storing fabric, food, paper, or other materials in damp areas of the home, such as the basement. If you do need to store materials there, then consider putting those items inside a plastic storage bin instead of cardboard boxes. In terms of humidity levels that we recommend you try to keep in the home, it's in the range of 30 to 50%, and then you can kind of use a humidifier or a dehumidifier to control it if one is available. Make sure the seal around your tubs and your sinks are tight so that there is no water leakage. And lastly, with your roof gutters, just make sure it's well maintained and cleaned so that water is being directed away from the house instead of towards it. So sort of to end the slide on mold, or this section, I just want to end with a quote from Dr. Thomas Dignan. And so he says, "Mold in housing is one of the issues that can impact your health and your family's health. Yes, when there is a lot of mold in a home, it's not a simple problem to address and usually requires professional help. However, everyone has a role to play in preventing mold and understanding what to do to clean up small areas and how to get help with larger areas. Even the little things you can do can help your health." So tip number 8 is to ventilate your home. So ventilation refers to the movement of air into and out of the home. And ventilation is a very important way to improve indoor air quality because it can remove the poor or the bad indoor air pollutants and replace it with fresh air from outside. And there's a couple of ways you can ventilate your home. Like I mentioned before, something as simple as opening the door or window when the weather outside permits or when the air quality is good is one way to ventilate your home. And there are other ways, or mechanical ways of ventilation, such as using an air exchanger like an HRV, which can also improve indoor air quality as well. So in terms of understanding where the sources of indoor air pollution comes from can also help you better address some of those risks. So common sources of indoor air pollution that we know, it may include from smoking, from heating your home, from cooking, even things like cleaning and doing laundry. But other places where indoor air pollution may come from, it may come from household items and furniture, especially new furniture when you get it, the varnishes when it off-gases, and also during renovations and home improvement projects. So here are a couple of ways you can improve indoor air quality. Consider selecting low-emission cleaning products. Make sure to ventilate your home well when you're renovating and engaging in traditional artistry and crafts. And try to choose low-emission paints, varnishes, glues, and building products. Limit the use of candles and incense if possible. Ensure that your furnaces, wood stoves, and fireplaces are installed and working properly. If you do have a wood stove in your home, try to avoid burning wood that has paint on it or has been chemically treated, because some of those chemicals may off-gas during the burning process. Another thing is in indoor environments, try not to barbecue indoors or run generators inside too, because that could lead to a buildup of carbon monoxide. And if all else fails, there are also portable air cleaners. Ones with HEPA filters are usually a pretty good way of reducing indoor air pollutants. So tip number 9 is to install alarms and prevent carbon monoxide poisoning. So having smoke alarms in a home is very important. Making sure you're installing it in the right place and having the correct number is equally so. So what we usually recommend is talk to your local fire authority on the correct placement and installation of fire alarms in the home. And so there are recommendations, and it depends on this jurisdiction in which it falls upon. They may recommend having them in the bedrooms, or if not, in the hallways outside the bedrooms, and generally on each level of the home. When you are installing some of the smoke alarms yourself, make sure to follow and read every step of the manufacturer's directions. They'll often have instructions on the installation, testing the smoke alarms too, which we recommend ideally it's every month, and also when to change the batteries and replace the alarms when it reaches the end of its lifespan. And similarly, if a fire alarm ever goes off, it's always good to investigate the source of it and to have an escape plan in the case of a real fire. So carbon monoxide in homes is very important. Carbon monoxide gas is produced from combustion. And so in Canada, especially during the winter months, because we are heating our home through furnaces, wood stoves, the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning is a little bit higher. So Health Canada's recommendations is in general to install carbon monoxide alarms in the hallways outside of the sleeping areas. That way, if it goes off while you're asleep, you can hear it, versus in the basement beside your furnace, for example. And at minimum, you should have at least one carbon monoxide alarm installed. And be aware of what symptoms of carbon monoxide look like. So at very, very low levels of carbon monoxide poisoning, it may resemble flu-like symptoms. So it may be nausea, tiredness, maybe shortness of breath. But at very high levels, it may include a loss of consciousness and even death. In terms of how to reduce carbon monoxide from entering your home, if you have an attached garage, try to keep the doors between the house and the garage closed when you're not using it. Never idle your vehicle in the garage, and try not to idle your car near the windows of the home and doors too. If the carbon monoxide alarm sounds, you should do the following. Make sure to leave your home immediately. Don't try to locate the source of the carbon monoxide yourself. And once you're outside, call your local emergency services. So when you're picking a smoke alarm or a carbon monoxide alarm, these are some of the common certification marks that you may find on these alarms. And so these certification marks have met Canadian safety standards, and you will find these marks both on the packaging and on the alarm itself. So just something to keep your eye out for if you're buying one of these alarms. And so on to the final tip, I wanted to talk about radon. But before I get into that, I guess a question for everyone just to think about is, have you tested your home for radon? And so if your answer is no, that's actually not unexpected, because in the recent 2021 StatsCan household survey, only 9% of people in Canada have tested their home for radon. And we're certainly hoping for that number to improve. So our final tip is tip number 10, test for radon. So for those that aren't familiar with what radon is, it's a naturally occurring radioactive gas, and it's produced when uranium in the ground breaks down. So it is a form of natural radiation that we are exposed to, but it does account for our largest exposure. We find it both outdoors, in outdoor air, but because the gas mixes with the outdoor air, the levels are very low and don't pose a very high health risk. It's really in enclosed spaces such as homes where we can sometimes see radon levels build up to levels that can be quite harmful to your health. So our recommendation is to consider doing a radon test. So from what we know in the research that we've done, all homes have some level of radon to some extent, unless they're built sometimes in the northern regions where they're built on stilts and they may not have direct contact with the ground. But really the only way to know how much radon is in your home is to do a test. So you can see from this diagram here, and hopefully everyone can see it, there's many different ways that radon can enter your home. It can come in through cracks in the foundation, an open floor drain, up through wall cavities, and even gapping around piping entering your home. In some cases, in rare instances, radon gas can also enter the home through well water. It's not so much an issue of you drinking it, because when you open the faucet, the radon gas will kind of aerate and off-gas into the air. It's more of a concern that you're breathing in this radon gas. So in Canada, the Canadian guideline for radon is 200 becquerels per meters cube. So why are we so concerned about radon? What we know is that radon is actually the number one cause of lung cancer in non-smokers in the country. And annually, every year, over 3,000 people in Canada die from radon-induced lung cancer. So radon is a known carcinogen. And so this is a map of radon, and this was done through a cross-country survey that was done by Health Canada several years back. So the colors represent the percentage of homes that tested and were found to exceed the Canadian guideline level. The darker the color, the higher the percentage. So from this map, you can see that there really is no area of the country that is completely radon-free. And even if you live in an area where on the map it looks like it's more relatively low risk, what we have found through our cross-country survey is that sometimes there can be two houses found side by side, and one can have above guideline levels of radon while the other can be below guideline. So it's really important to do a test. So there's a couple of ways you can kind of go about doing a radon test. The first is there's the do-it-yourself radon test kits that you can purchase. We recommend that if you are getting one, that they are certified by the Canadian National Radon Proficiency Program. Alternatively, the other option is you can hire a certified radon mitigation, radon measurement professional. With radon testing, we recommend testing during the fall and winter months, and that's just because that's when we see the highest buildup of radon. It's probably you're heating up your home, your windows are closed, and you would want to test for a minimum of 3 months or 91 days. Afterwards, that device gets sent to a laboratory, and they will tell you what the results of the test are. So I often get a lot of questions about community radon testing and support that's available for it. So there is a non-for-profit organization. They're called Take Action on Radon, and they do support community testing. In addition to that, at the federal level, Health Canada does have some grants for radon testing, as well as, I believe, Indigenous Services Canada as well. So if you're interested in that information, you're welcome. We can talk after this presentation, and I can give you the information. So if a home has tested for radon and the level is above the Canadian guideline level of 200 becquerels per meters cube, we recommend that action is taken to lower the levels in the span of 1 to 2 years. It really depends on what the concentration is. There are techniques to lower radon, and they are very effective. With a radon mitigation system, it can be installed in less than 1 day, and in most homes, it can reduce radon by up to 90%. So another question I often get is, I've tested my home, what do I do about the mitigation and the costs associated with installing a system? So there's a case study, I think, that was done in a Quebec First Nations community, Kitigan-Zibi. And so their community, they found a lot of their homes had very high levels of radon. And what they did is that they actually trained or had their local community members certified to do the mitigation work themselves. That way they don't have to rely on external expertise for that, and the cost to mitigate would then be significantly lower as well. So this is a summary of the 10 tips that Rashid and I have presented today. And when you're sort of applying the tips and evaluating the risks in your home, just consider that there are certain groups or populations in your home that may be a little bit more at risk. And so that includes children, seniors, pregnant people, and people with pre-existing health conditions. And in terms of what Health Canada can offer, so as Rashid mentioned, we're part of the Health Canada's outreach engagement team. So presentations similar to what we've given to you today, we're always happy to do it for you, whether it's virtually or in person. If you would like to deliver this messaging yourself, we can provide you with the scientific and technical information to do that. A lot of the information we've offered today is also available via brochures and pamphlets, and we've left some of them on the table if you're interested. There's also a couple of more detailed radon mitigation guides in the front if you would like. But we're happy to mail these out to you. And if you want to adapt them and customize them, we can definitely help you, support you with that process. We also offer technical guidance documents. So if, for example, if you're a construction, you want to know about radon prevention in new construction or new buildings, there is guidance documents on that. Same with mitigating homes with existing buildings. In addition to that, we also have another guidance document that's on how to set up a clean airspace during wildfire smoke events. So if you have any inquiries based on what we have presented today, this is actually our email. It's radon_ontario@healthcanada.sc.gc.ca. So this goes to our Ontario regional office, and I'm actually the one that usually answers it, so I will probably be the one responding. And then a lot of our resources too are also available on just the generic canada.ca/health website, and we have it available in French as well. And yeah, that kind of concludes the end of our presentation for today. I see we have about 5 minutes for questions. Is there any questions for Rashid and I based off of what we have talked about today?
And we did leave the tips. I know we went through it fast, so apologies. There's a lot of great tips for implementing environmental health ideas in communities. We left the tips on the table, so feel free to take them home. And yeah, after housing is built and after infrastructure is put into place, I've learned from this conference how important it is to maintain healthy homes. And I know you probably have a lot of great ideas and challenges and different experiences in upkeep and making sure the residents in your communities have long-term health care and benefits from the homes. So we'd love to hear also your stories and your successes or challenges. So feel free to email us and let us know. And we'll see if there's any way that we can provide help too. And I really hope you found value in the presentation and it helps you with implementing these healthy home strategies in your communities to care for and protect your residents from chemicals and pollutants and other environmental dangers. Thank you.
Questions, guys? Any questions?
More so towards the radon testing kit.
Yes.
Do you know if there's any federal programming that's going to be implemented, so everybody has access to radon testing kits, opposed to having to go out and buy them? Down in the U.S., I work for public health down there, and the radon test kits, we have, it was January, the month of January is radon testing month.
Yep.
And we offered a program where it was $2 for a kit, and there was a self-paid envelope in there, and it was sent off to the lab. You got your results back. Do you think Canada would be doing something similar in the near future?
So in the near future, I wouldn't be able to, I can't guarantee that per se, but on a smaller scale, just on a community level, Health Canada has supported these community level testing projects in which we'll give out free radon test kits. Usually we'll coordinate with someone in the community on the distribution of it. And then when the results come back, because these are your results, it's how you want to present it, keep the data safe. That is for you to decide. But yes, we do have, there is a Health Canada Radon Outreach Contribution Program that we run from our National Radon Program. So the email that I had before the Radon Ontario one,
Sure.
you can email to me and I can send you the application. Alternatively, another place to look is there's a non-for-profit organization called Take Action on Radon. They do a 100 test kit community challenge, and very similarly, they'll give a community 100 free test kits, and they'll provide the webinar, the training on how to set up the test properly in the home, and they'll analyze and map the results for you. So I would say there's sort of two ways you could kind of look for funding or testing money that way.
Okay. The other question that I had in regards to radon testing, the frequency of the testing, where I'm used to work, we would recommend that it would be every year, because of course radon, January happens every year, so we encourage the people to actually come in and get those tests. So the frequency would be the same here?
So in a home, generally, there's not like really a recommendation on how often you should retest if you are below guideline, because your ventilation in your home really shouldn't change too much unless you do major renovations to your home, such as making it more energy efficient. Or maybe the basement, which formerly was not used as a bedroom, now has someone occupying that area. In that case, you might want to consider a retest.
Okay,
Now, if you're above guideline, you've tested above guideline, you've installed some sort of mitigation system to ensure that system is running as it should be, you should test every 5 years.
Okay. In regards to mold, one of the things that I found out
Yeah.
when we're actually doing the move and stuff like that is that we had our mattresses on the floor because we had all of our furniture in storage. We found that mold started to build up because of the carpeting and the wall. So it would be really highly recommended to pull out the furniture, just to give that extra flow of ventilation in the house as well. I just wanted to add to the,
And that's great. That's great
Um,
advice.
And then also the vinegar, we use vinegar, we did the soap and water, but we also use the added vinegar because it's acidic and it kind of kills some of the mold, so that would be another thing. About your formaldehyde and the other portion of it, do you guys also offer lead programs up here?
Lead programs?
Yes.
So we have been talking to, because Health Canada doesn't do any of the community, like we're more about research and education programs.
Okay.
We do try to fund some other programs, but Indigenous Service Canada or CMHC, if you reach out to them, they might be able to connect you with anyone who does anything to do with lead testing. I know with lead, if you are concerned of, say, let's say your paint, is there lead in my paint or in my walls? You can mail samples. I don't have the contact with me, but it's free. You can just mail us samples and we will test it for you. Lead in water or in taps, you have to contact local authorities for testing.
Okay. I think those are all the questions I had. So, anybody else?
Yeah, I just had one question regarding the radon. Is there a certain style of home with basement as opposed to bungalows where it's higher? Like we're not disturbing the earth to put in a basement. We have multiple bungalows. Do you find the radon levels are a bit higher or lower?
So there's a lot of factors that go into predicting the radon levels in your home. The first is obviously the concentration of just uranium in your local area, right? The other is what we've seen with just the ages of the home. So yes, old homes, maybe they do have more cracks in their foundation where we may see radon gas coming in. But another trend we've also been noticing recently is that in new homes, because they are designed to be so energy efficient, they actually are sealing in more of the radon gas inside. So a specific style of home, I can't say there is one. Without doing the test, it is hard to say. Weather patterns can also impact it. The size of the home, how many contact points you have with the ground could also be another factor as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good presentation. Just a question. Does Health Canada provide any support for epidemiological studies at the community level to look at outcomes, health outcomes, and exposures to some of those chemicals and other contaminants that you mentioned?
Like I'm the specific one, I'm not sure, but definitely Health Canada has supported sort of special case studies like that in the past. So if you do have an idea, I can certainly bring that forward to my manager and have a discussion whether that's something that we would be able to support or fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just another point, a lot of the tips that you mentioned were surrounding reading the label and following directions. During the COVID, in our health promotion efforts, we recognized that a lot of population, a subset of the population or First Nations communities do not speak or write English or French. So in terms of the material that you produce, do you produce any in syllabics or First Nations language? And in terms of Health Canada being a regulator, is there any policy that you know of that will mandate commercial entities to put syllabics as a language on labels for products?
That's a wonderful question. So recently, the Chemical Management Plan, along with Consumer Product Safety, who are in charge of labeling, they conducted a large study with how to make labeling more reach vulnerable or people at risk, vulnerable populations, people at risk. That workshop has recently concluded, and they are working on making sure that people do have access or labels are more accessible to people. I'm not sure what the results are yet, because it actually just completed over the summer. And it was a very big study. And I really do hope that that also is included, like translations. I know Indigenous Service Canada is also working on adopting these healthy home messaging to communicate to bring in, as they're doing the work with communities, also to start bringing this chemical awareness, reading the labels. And right now they don't have any materials, but they are in process of developing as we talked to them before we presented this presentation. So part of that would be translating too. So hopefully to come. But that's a very, very, very good point. So thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, my question relates to radon. Is there specific geographical climate regions where radon would naturally be present versus more hot climate areas?
So it would, I think there's been studies trying to link if the uranium concentrations in the ground can be a predictor of if a house will have high levels of radon. And I believe the linkage for that is not very strong, just because there's so many other factors that kind of influence it. But at least I could say in Canada, there are pockets in the prairie provinces, for example. Some of them may be former uranium mining areas where they naturally just have very high levels of uranium and radon gas. And depending on the province and the municipality, some of them have implemented sort of building codes on radon prevention in new builds, but it differs from municipality to municipality, province to province. Every community is a little bit different. So I guess difficult to say just geography itself is a predictor of whether the house will have radon gas. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, okay.
One last question, guys.
Yeah, when you said uranium, I kind of envisioned rocky area
Yeah.
versus a swampy area.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we live in rocky geographical area, there's a greater level of potential radon in those potential construction sites.
That I'm not, truth be told, that I'm not entirely sure, and I'd have to ask our research team, but that is a valid question. Yeah.
Yeah, I did have a question, but pretty much answered it already. Just with the radon and that, with building codes, is it going to be part of new housing to prevent it from seeping up through?
Yeah, so in the 2010 National Building Code, there were a couple of radon prevention measures that were added to it. Now, I guess how that works when provinces adopt it, it's up to each province how much of it they want to adopt. Specifically Ontario, just because I'm from the Ontario Regional Office. The province of Ontario never fully adopted it. They've only listed 3 areas in Ontario. I believe it's Elliott Lake, the township of Faraday, and there's like another one too, where it's mandatory that all their new builds must incorporate these measures. The rest of the municipalities in Ontario, how the Ontario Building Code basically poses it, is that it's up to each municipality to determine if soil gas issues are a problem. And that's a very, very, it can be a very vague statement. So what we have seen, there are some municipalities outside of the mandated areas, I would say Windsor, Kingston, London, I think even Thunder Bay itself, to sort of determine if soil gas issues are a problem. They themselves, I think along with the local public health unit, they did their own additional community study on radon to be able to sort of justify and identify areas where there are high levels of radon. And sort of having that map and data to sort of back up, they have that then the justification to say we need to add this to our own local building codes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
We have a lot of issue, a mold issue in the communities. So, and we received a lot of requests for the mold inspection in Travel Council. So is there any provision from Health Canada or from the government side for the inspection?
No, we were asking that too, because we do get this question a lot. So as we approached Indigenous Service Canada and Environmental Health, they asked us to put the communities in contact with environmental health officers, right? Is it?
Public health
Public health
officers.
officers, sorry, to look for if there's anything available for inspections. Normally, housing inspections are done by professionals or industry. I'm not sure about government funding. Did you have anything to add to that for the?
Yeah, so like I guess our program specifically, we don't do it. And when we had talked to ISC about it, they had mentioned just getting in touch with the environmental public health officers to see if they can offer more direction on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's hear it for Rashid and Phoebe. Thank you. The working group would like to present you this
Oh,
present.
thank you.
If anything from Abraham Muniz.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
And I do have some radon reduction guides in the front. It's a little booklet, but it's a pretty detailed explanation of the testing mitigation process. So you're welcome to take one home. And if there's a couple there, if we run out, I can also email you or mail you one as well.
Question I had was during mold, you get a new build, so get a new build, and then you're in an area where there's a lot of moisture and trees and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you get this. Once it's disturbed, it gets into the air and everywhere, and it gets just prevent cancer. What was that mean? Is there anything in place to help with that?
More from like mitigating the problem or for
Awareness or?
aware. Oh yeah, we have a lot of, we have infographics on mold too. So I could, maybe let me get your contact information. I can mail you what we have if you want to adapt it yourself or we can, I'm sure our manager would support translations too. If you feel that's appropriate, we can kind of look for that resource. Let me just get my notebook.
We're on an island, so
Yeah.
a lot of times
I'm
you get
from
little
BC.
dead trees and stuff.
There you go. Write your name and your email address, did you have a question?
Yeah,
Yes.
see, okay, look, I'm from Manitoba, right?
Yes.
And this is what we're doing over there,
Okay.
is screw piles
Right.
and the ground, and then they just put a vapor barrier there, right?
Yes.
So what I'm asking, like our home, the older homes had concrete slabs.
Yeah.
Is there a greater risk
With
for the
what?
radon leaking through because there's no,
So the vapor barrier is actually one of the radon prevention methods, but my understanding, and I'm not very technical, is that it has to be sealed very tightly.
I know.
And with new homes too, I understand, in the foundation, when concrete shrinks too, it results in cracks along the side.
but
as
you
it
can
dries.
seal those, right?
You could seal them, but I think
But
people,
see, what I'm saying like this, wouldn't it be easier to leak out because there is no, like if it's just, like say the border of the house here, and
Yeah.
it just comes up to there, right
Yeah.
around.
yeah, if there's a place where it isn't fully sealed, that could be a
So
potential.
this is what I was thinking, if I could, what I wanted to do is, okay, I wanted to test one of these houses, right? From to the old houses
Yeah,
that have the concrete slab
yeah,
and see if there is a difference.
okay. Let me, how about I send you, we have some technical guidance documents on radon prevention in new buildings. Maybe take a look at that and see what aspects of in the new home that you're already implementing, and then you can kind of can do a test. I'll look up what research studies that we have on that topic. But no, that is an interesting point.
Yeah. See, that was my, well, that's my most,
Yeah. Thank you.
point that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
What that radon seeping through, like, I can see that there's a 4-inch or 3-inch concrete with no cracks in it, okay, that's sealed.
Yeah.
But if you have the vapor barrier, say you have a rodent even coming up,
It could.
dig a hole,
Yeah. So there's actually these things called radon.
is that gonna work?
Preventing, so they do, here, this is preventing radon in buildings, and they do talk about, sorry, I don't have to, there's a, they recommend a sealed, like, plastic membrane, that's where the soil gets gas barrier.
So this is under the foundation slab,
Yeah.
see, we don't have a slab,
Oh, okay.
see, that's what I'm trying to get at. Wouldn't it be a greater risk for the radon coming up?
Okay. I guess it's possible, like, I'm not,
See, that has a slab there, right?
yeah, but
See, ours don't.
you don't have one, okay. Then I suppose without that extra layer of protection, that could be, well, let me get your contact information. I'll send you
Okay.
what technical documents that we do have, and then if it's a question that I can't answer, I'll try to find someone within our national research group who's maybe more
Oh, I was
well-versed.
saying, if,
Yeah.
they're gonna have another meeting like in Manitoba
Yes.
in November, so I wanna have a friend work with that one too.
Okay, and we do have a regional office in the Manitoba area as well. I just don't think it's staffed at the moment, but let me look, and I'll see if I can find you.
Maybe Walter Lindsay. Technology.
And we'll start the conversation from there. I'll try to find you.
Okay, right on, thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
You guys have a lot of questions there, Rashid?
Yeah, that is like, oh, awesome. Maybe we didn't address it during the presentation. We gotta take it back.
Maybe we should do 5 tips.
5 tips. But that was great. It was a nice small audience, so thanks for setting that up.
You did it all.
Do you need help? We can take some of our extra.
They're looking for surveys. Is that right?
Yeah, do you want to read on it? Yeah, go for it. And I don't have to hold it back. Do you want one of these 10 tips things?
I got one. Maybe just picking up surveys off the
Oh,
table.
okay. Oh, well, let's see. The survey results, will you be sending that to us in terms of how we can improve our presentations?
Once we get things tallied, there'll be a report that we do. I don't know if we send it to everybody, but
Okay.
just maybe remind me in like a couple weeks.
Okay.
Because we gotta get, there's online surveys too.
How's the virtual portion of this conference going? It's your first hybrid one, right?
I don't know. I have only, we've got some attendees, but I was on the thing for you guys and there was 4 online for yours.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Doesn't mean it's anything to do with you, it's just depending on online and how many people, some people go to depending what they're looking for.
Yeah, well, I find online, our experience with the pandemic, online wasn't the
But
greatest.
there's a recording, so you can always go to the video.
Oh, I forgot. I totally forgot.
No, that's okay, that's okay. I was just so concerned about I want to learn from this presentation, right? So
Yeah.
please email me if you have any.
Did I pass?
No, put it in the, pure layer didn't come yet. We gotta go put it in those. Oh, really? Okay, well, I'll stick this. Do you want me to put it? I'll go.
Oh, it's okay. It's paper. I don't want to.
Okay. I'm just gonna go toss this. Pure layer.
Is that on Sunday? Sunday? Yeah, okay. Look. Yeah? Tough.
No, it's hers. I'll get her to phone after. Beautiful, thank you. Bye.
Works.
Are you presenting?
Yep.
Yeah, the tech people will come in and help you out too, but they,
They're supposed to load it up and everything.